Welcome into the PFF NFL Daily. Today discussing the Cincinnati Bengals. Are they the best team in the AFC, Sam? The hype was it was already high. It was already massive after the Bengals destroyed the Baltimore Ravens in week 16, and then they come out in week 17 against the number one team in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs. They take it to them, and they handled the early onslaught against the Chiefs, came back, all sorts of drama. But Joe Burrow and particularly Jamar Chase, unstoppable for the Bengals. So are they now the best team in the AFC, even though they're not technically the number one seed right now?
Down 2 touchdowns multiple times in that game and just kept plugging away, kept coming back. It was really impressive. Yeah, look, I think the hype was getting a little bit out of control heading into that game. You know, people were saying that the Bengals were the best team in the NFL, or the best offense, or the completely unstoppable, or all these kinds of things. You know, that Joe Burrow was the better quarterback of the two, and that, you know, given the choice, you would take Burrow over Mahomes for the next X number of years. It was getting a little bit out of control, but Cincinnati showed up and showed that, like, they weren't just a product of a completely banged up Baltimore team. They were able to go out there and not just hang with Kansas City, but hang with them in ugly situations, down a couple of scores, with an offensive line that is still banged up. Like, Chris Jones potentially was going to be a complete game wrecker and really wasn't. Like, had a few plays here or there, but generally they were able to execute fine despite being in must-pass situations for most of the game. And it went back to like the tail of early season, right, where everything we throw in the direction of Jamar Chase comes up smelling of roses.
Yeah, let me just make some comparisons here because 2 weeks ago, you and I were previewing the Ravens game. And we said, look, the Ravens are depleted in the secondary. Put the ball in Joe Burrow's hands. Become a Joe Burrow team here.
Yeah.
Let's not forget what's happened earlier in the year. There were games where Joe Burrow barely even threw the ball in the second half. The Bengals had leads. The running game was going. The game was completely out of hand. But they were very conservative. They have turned it over to Joe Burrow. He is the number one graded quarterback by PFF numbers, by our grading. And I think, you know, everything about him, right? I mean, either smoking the cigar, celebrating after. He's always kind of had that quote unquote it factor that we somewhat frown upon. But in these types of games, whether it was at LSU on that national title run, or whether it's here in the NFL, when the games are on the line, Joe Burrow seems to be stepping up. And it's not just him. As I mentioned, Jamar Chase was unstoppable. And you could question Kansas City's play calling defensively, leaving single coverage on 3rd and 27 or whatever it might be. But dude, that guy was incredible. Unstoppable on short stuff down the field. The confidence that Joe Burrow has throwing the ball to Jamar Chase. And all of this, I think, can happen in these last few weeks because T. Higgins emerged as a great threat. So now all of a sudden, if you're the Bengals, you feel better about putting the ball in Joe Burrow's hands because you've got Chase, because you have Higgins, because you have Tyler Boyd, and they're running backs out of the backfield. This offense is really coming together because the weapons are very good, and Joe Burrow has been playing just outstanding ball.
Yeah, Burrow's been incredible. And like, if it wasn't for the fact that Joe Cool was already a nickname taken by a guy named Joe Montana, like that would be the nickname that Burrow was earning himself over the last few weeks. He does just look calm and in control in these situations where they're not good. Like Cincinnati being down a couple of touchdowns to the Chiefs is a situation that is ugly for a quarterback to be in. That's not where you want to be. And yet he just carried on going and delivering the pass where it needs to go. And, you know, the Bengals rode their luck a little bit at times during this game. Certainly there was a drive where, like, the officials seemed to take it upon themselves to just, this drive's not ending for Cincinnati. We're going to find, you know, a pass interference call for you. We're going to find a weird, you know, roughing the tackle guy penalty for just hitting him too hard.
It was a near interception that ended up becoming the penalty, right? On that, was that the drive, I believe?
So, you know, there was certainly, they rode their luck on occasions. On the other hand, like, Patrick Mahomes threw the ball to the hands of Cincinnati cornerbacks twice, and they didn't come up with either of them. So, you know, you can kind of swings and roundabouts there, right? Sometimes they rode their luck. Sometimes they got a little bit unfortunate with plays they didn't make. But I think ultimately, this was a real, genuine statement win, and they were good for beating who was a team that was the number one seed heading into that game.
Yeah, I want to discuss the entire AFC, but first, don't forget, we've hit the final week of the pro football regular season, and college football is heading into the national championship. DraftKings Sportsbook has an unbelievable offer to get all fans in on the action for this exciting time in the football calendar. New customers can bet just $5 on any football team to win their game, and if they do, you win $200 in free bets. So let's wind down the season with a big win. If Sportsbook isn't yet available in your state, you can still find a way to the winner's circle. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings daily fantasy football contests. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Bet just $5 on any football team, college or pro, and win $200 in free bets if they're victorious. It's promo code PFF this week at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. It's funny we're talking about these supposed flashy teams, right? The Bengals and this high-powered offense. The Chiefs seems like they've gotten their stride back a little bit more offensively, especially from where they were in the middle of the season. They're not back perfectly there, but it's the Tennessee Titans who actually hold control of the number one seed right now, and they play the Houston Texans next week. Yeah, they lost to the Texans already, but you have to feel good about if you're a Tennessee Titans fan, you have to feel good about them getting the number one seed. So we pose the question, are the Bengals the best team in the AFC? The Patriots are still lurking. The Bills are still there. It's still wide open here in the AFC, but what a win by the Bengals and a statement game against the Chiefs.
It really was. And, technically the number one seed is still open for them as well. Like
True.
they need some help. They need Tennessee to lose to Houston. They need the Chiefs to lose as well. But it's still possible. Like, remember when they went, they had the number one seed earlier in the season. I think they were 6-3 at the time. And everybody was sort of saying, yeah, I mean, this isn't a number one seed kind of team. And then they lost some games at one point a few weeks ago. They were out of the playoff picture completely. And all of a sudden, they've kind of jumped back into it. They're probably not going to end up with the number one seed, but they've locked up the division. A division where heading into week 17, all four teams could still win it. So I think you have to be massively impressed by what they've done. The one kind of, I don't even know if it's an area of concern, but a characteristic of this offense has been when Jamar Chase has that Midas touch, when everything, going in his direction comes up in great, that offense is unstoppable. Like Chase today had a play where he caught the ball. There was defenders all around him. He made one move, wrong foot at the linebacker, and then just outran everybody into the end zone, right? That's a play that you shouldn't be making. Like, most receivers cannot make that play at all. And most defenses should be stopping that, but they didn't. And when they don't, that's where Jamar Chase adds that value, just creates these incredible plays. This was the first game for a long time where he's caught multiple contested catches. That had been an area of his game that had kind of disappeared since earlier in the season. So I guess my point is simply, if Chase catches the bad end of that variance, which has already happened this season, if he goes through a cool period where he's not making those insane plays or busting a bunch of tackles and just outrunning everybody into the end zone, I don't know if this Bengals offense has quite enough with the T. Higgins and the Tyler Boyds, and particularly if that offensive line is still reeling or depleted, for them to overcome, a cooling off of Jamar Chase.
By the way, for perspective, he had 11 catches for 266 yards and 3 scores, Jamar Chase. And that one where he ran through the defense, he did that earlier in the season against the Baltimore Ravens. Yep. I wasn't expecting that to be a part of Jamar Chase's game. I thought he'd be a good downfield receiver. I didn't think he was going to be pulling out multiple 70, 80-yard catch and runs all that often. But he's been winning all over the field. I disagree a little bit. I think the Bengals are more equipped now than they were earlier in the season. I feel better about T. Higgins' emergence and all that. That if Jamar Chase is at least garnering attention from opposing defenses, I do feel like those other guys, I mean, you'd rather have Jamar Chase have his 10 catches and 200 yards like he's done a bunch, but I do think the Bengals are more equipped maybe to win without him. The other thing about the Bengals season, I mean, they lost in overtime to the 49ers, to the Packers. I mean, they are a really fine line from themselves being in control of that number one seed. Sure. But right now it looks like the Titans have the inside path. Let's finish up just discussing the Kansas City Chiefs briefly. We'll have a full breakdown on the PFF NFL podcast, but the Chiefs, they seemed like they had their stride, had a big winning streak. They had the number one seed in their sights, and now they might have to actually play a wild card game for the first time with Patrick Mahomes under center at quarterback. Are the Chiefs back in this, question mark land, instead of, the team to beat in the AFC?
I'm not sure there is a team to beat this year. And I'm not even sure there's a team to beat in either conference. I mean, Tampa Bay just struggled past the New York Jets. Like everybody seems to have a game somewhere where they wobble. And for most teams, it's a couple. So look, the Chiefs offense was good again in this game, and they did face a lot more of those too high looks that gave them so many problems earlier in the season. I think genuinely getting their confidence back through facing the Raiders a couple of times and the Chargers has fixed them. Like they're not the kind of turnover machine offense that they were earlier in the season. The Bengals did a reasonable job a lot of the time in this game of slowing them down, and they still put up a ton of points. So I think their offense is back, maybe not again quite where it was in the last couple of years, but good. And that defense, it didn't have a great game today, but their defense has been the thing that's carried them so far. So they might have to do it the hard way, but I think the Chiefs are still as good as any team in the AFC.
We have the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow playing as well as any quarterback in the NFL right now. An explosive offense in Cincinnati, and another signature win for Burrow and the Bengals, the AFC North champions this year. Are the Bengals the best team in the AFC?